At 3 a.m. the world stops pretending. It's that hour when the hum of the world softens, when neon lights fade to whispers, and even the moon seems unsure of her own reflection. And there, amid this great hush, you'll often find the elderly wide awake. Why? Is it insomnia, faulty body clock, or is it something far more poetic, far more profound? You see, to wake up at 3 a.m. is to be summoned by something ancient. Not a problem, but a pattern, etched into our bones, whispered through generations. And the older one becomes, the closer they drift to that whisper. In this talk, we won't just look at the science, though we will brush against it lightly. We'll explore the metaphysical, the psychological, the timeless. Because this is not about sleep. It's about what wakes us when all else sleeps. If you've ever wanted to understand the deeper rhythms of aging, if you've wondered why a parent, a grandparent, or even you might stir as the world slumbers, then stay with me. We are about to walk a path that moves beyond time, and it begins at 3 a.m. 3 a.m. is not just a number on a clock. It is a liminal space between night and day, between dream and waking, between the outer noise of the world and the inner silence of the self. For elderly people, this time is not chosen but arrived at, as if some unseen tide pulls them gently to the surface of consciousness. The stillness of 3 a.m. has a quality unlike any other hour. It is uninhabited, unclaimed, and perhaps it is precisely this emptiness that makes it feel like a place where something can be heard, something quieter than thought. As we age, time shifts its meaning. In youth, time is something to outrun, to fill, to conquer. In later years, time becomes more like a companion, sometimes kind, sometimes cruel, but always present. At 3 a.m., time doesn't push or pull. It simply waits. It breathes with you. For the elderly, this moment might feel like the only space left where everything is truly still. No phone rings, no expectations knock. There is no one to be, only this quiet, where memory, feeling, and presence drift like smoke. The world, having emptied itself, leaves behind a kind of sacred residue. And in that residue, something stirs. Perhaps it's a dream lingering. Perhaps it's a name long forgotten returning to the lips. Perhaps it's simply the weight of a life well lived, pressing gently against the chest. This hour holds more than just wakefulness. It holds awareness, not of the calendar, not of schedules, but of being itself. The darkness outside mirrors an inward kind of seeing. The elderly wake not because they are restless, but because something within them is more awake than ever before. Something that has been waiting for the noise to die down so it can finally speak. As the body ages, so too does its rhythm. Its inner clock that once marched to the beat of ambition and activity begins to waltz to a slower, quieter tune. The circadian rhythm which governs our cycles of sleep and wakefulness doesn't stay static through the decades. In youth it flows in tight loops, synced neatly with sunrise and sunset. But in older age it stretches and softens. The body begins to shift its preferred time for rest and alertness. Melatonin, the sleep hormone that used to surge at night like a tide, now arrives earlier and with less insistence. Sleep becomes lighter, more fragile. The nights, once deep and uninterrupted, begin to crack and splinter into smaller pieces. And so, at 3 a.m., the body wakes, not from disturbance, but from its own retuning. It's not malfunction, it's transformation. In the earlier parts of life, waking at this hour might be cause for concern, but for the elderly, it is often a natural consequence of the body adapting to new rhythm. What once was 8 hours becomes 6. What once was sleeping until dawn becomes waking in the dark. But there is something gentle in this change, something almost respectful. The body in its wisdom gives back time, time to reflect, to listen, to simply exist without expectation. It offers an invitation into the soft edges of the day when everything is still becoming. In the quiet of 3 a.m., the body does not fail. It simply listens more closely to the deep and subtle music of change. In the stillness of 3 a.m., the mind is unburdened. The chatter that fills the day, the names, tasks, regrets, and appointments, has quieted. For the elderly, this hour becomes a kind of open field, free from the obligations that once structured every moment. The mind, having spent a lifetime in motion, begins to drift differently now, not hurried, not chasing, but floating. During the day, there are so many roles to play: parent, grandparent, friend, patient, citizen. But in this hour before dawn, those roles fall away like mist. What remains is the raw, uninterrupted experience of being. It is in these moments that memories come, not as a flood, but as single drops, carrying with them the scent of old laughter or the warmth of a hand once held. The mind, no longer busy with survival or ambition, begins to revisit what it once stored away, not in confusion, but in clarity. It recalls what it now has space to feel. In this freedom, the elderly find a kind of sacred solitude, not loneliness, but aloneness. Pure and reflective, the mind does not stir because it is anxious. It stirs because it has finally been given the silence it needs to speak. Thoughts arrive not as noise, but as visitors, and each one is met with less judgment, less urgency. There is time now, real time, to sit with them. In a world that often demands constant productivity, 3 a.m. offers a kind of rebellion, a pause, a return. For the elderly, this is not insomnia, it is invitation. A rare opportunity to commune with one's own mind, no longer buried beneath the demands of the world. This is the hour when the mind, instead of sleeping, begins to dream in waking. Waking at 3 a.m. may seem like a disruption, but perhaps it is something far more mysterious, something reaching out from within. For the elderly, this hour feels different, not simply because of age or biology, but because it is when the soul begins to whisper, not in words, but in presence. All distractions have fallen away. The world is quiet, the house is still, and even the body seems to surrender. And in that quiet, something more subtle begins to rise. There is something ancient about waking before dawn. Long before alarm clocks and electricity, our ancestors rose with the rhythms of the earth, their senses attuned to the cycles of light and dark, warmth and cold, safety and danger. For the elderly, this early waking is not a malfunction, but a return, a quiet re-entry into an older way of being. It's as if their bodies remember something the rest of us have forgotten. At 3 a.m., the world is stripped of its modern layers. There are no glowing screens, no traffic, no deadlines. What remains is closer to the primal. The air feels older, the silence deeper, and the presence of time more real. And within that, the elderly stir, not randomly, but rhythmically, like a tide returning to a familiar shore. There's something in the body's wisdom that leans toward this early rising. It is instinctive, as though age softens the walls we've built between ourselves and the natural world. The internal clock doesn't break. It aligns with something more enduring, something more honest. In this way, 3 a.m. becomes a point of connection, not isolation. A reconnection to the deeper cycles of life, where alertness comes not from caffeine or stress, but from a stillness so profound it becomes electric. These early hours are not interruptions, they are windows. Windows through which the elderly can gaze not only into the dark world outside, but into something even more timeless within themselves. In the simplicity of waking, when all else sleeps, there is a quiet kind of knowing. It's not intellectual, it's felt. Felt in the bones and the breath, in the hush that says, this too is life, and it is older than we remember. To understand why elderly people wake at 3 a.m. is to understand more than just sleep. It is to understand the way time itself reshapes with age. In youth, life is linear, always moving forward, always building, always becoming. But as one grows older, time bends. It stretches, it circles back, it becomes less about arrival and more about presence. And in that shift, waking early is not an inconvenience, it is a revelation. The world at 3 a.m. is unclaimed, unmeasured. There is no performance required, no productivity expected. For the elderly, who have spent decades meeting the demands of others, this hour becomes a rare space of complete freedom. And in that freedom lies a lesson for all of us. Aging is not just the body growing weaker. It is the mind growing wider, the heart becoming deeper, the self becoming more aware of the things that truly matter. When an elderly person wakes at 3 a.m., they are not simply breaking from sleep. In the end, the question of why elderly people wake at 3 a.m. is not merely about sleep, but about time itself, how it stretches, how it shifts, and how it offers new ways to be present in the world. This hour, quiet and still, invites us to see beyond the conventional understanding of aging as a decline. Instead, it opens the door to a deeper understanding of life's rhythms. Rhythms that can only be fully appreciated when we allow ourselves to step away from the noise and embrace the space between moments. The elderly, in their waking at 3 a.m., are not simply waking from sleep. They are waking to something much more profound, a connection to the inner workings of the self, the wisdom of age, and the timeless cycles of existence. As we observe this, we are reminded that life is not a race to be won, but a journey to be felt, and that sometimes the most important things are not the ones we achieve, but the ones we allow ourselves to experience in stillness. For in the quiet of 3 a.m. there is a profound invitation to listen, to reflect, and to find peace in simply being.